The fluorescent lights buzzed like angry wasps above the rows of identical beige houses in Green Valley Estates, where every blade of grass had to be exactly 2 inches and every flagpole required written approval from the HOA board. I was Harper Ellison, 38, chief accountant at Clarence Systems, raising Emma, 12, and Lucas, 9, in what everyone else called the perfect neighborhood. Perfect, sure, if you enjoyed living under the iron fist of Victoria Kane, our resident HOA president and self-appointed queen of nitpicky tyranny. Victoria, never Vicky, heaven forbid, glided through our cul-de-sac in pastel cardigans and pearl earrings, smiling that tight little smile while slapping $500 fines on anyone who dared let their trash can linger on the curb past 8 a.m. or allowed a child's bike to touch the sacred sidewalk for more than 6 minutes. She called it protecting property values. I called it a cult with better landscaping. For 2 years, I kept my head down, paid the fines, trimmed the hedges to regulation height, and bit my tongue when she publicly shamed me at the monthly board meeting for encouraging juvenile delinquency because Lucas left his skateboard out overnight. Neighbors whispered I was that single mom who doesn't respect the rules. Single mom, huh? Daniel had been gone for years, but the rumor mill didn't care about facts. That Tuesday started like any other HOA-infested morning. I was herding the kids into the car when Victoria's golf cart, adorned with a custom HOA president license plate, rolled up like a pastel tank. She leaned out, voice dripping honey. Harper, darling, the board received another complaint about your yard. The mulch is 2 shades too dark. We'll need that corrected by Friday or face another citation. Emma rolled her eyes so hard I heard it. Lucas just sighed and muttered, again? I smiled the smile of a woman who'd already paid $3,000 in petty fines that year. Of course, Victoria. Wouldn't want to ruin the neighborhood aesthetic. She patted my arm like we were old friends. You know, I'm only doing this for everyone's good. Trust the process, dear. Trust the process. That phrase would haunt me. By evening, the neighborhood Facebook group, secretly moderated by Victoria, was exploding with posts about certain residents ignoring the new no visible toys after dusk rule. My name wasn't mentioned, but the attached photo of Lucas's bike was time-stamped at 7:03 p.m. and tagged with passive-aggressive emojis. Comments poured in, some people just don't belong here. Maybe she should move to the city if she can't follow simple rules. I sat in my kitchen scrolling, jaw clenched, while the kids did homework. I could have fought back publicly. I could have posted receipts of every ridiculous fine. But I learned the hard way. Victoria thrived on drama. The louder you screamed, the tighter she squeezed. Thursday's emergency board meeting was called to address ongoing compliance issues. I walked in wearing my best corporate armor, blazer, heels, the face of a woman who audited million-dollar accounts for a living. Victoria presided from the head table like a judge at a show trial. She read the agenda in that syrupy voice. Item 1. Repeated violations by resident Harper Ellison. Photos provided by concerned neighbors. The screen lit up with my offenses. A garden gnome 1 inch too tall, a welcome mat that had faded from navy to indigo, and, horror of horrors, Emma's soccer ball touching the driveway crack. Gasps rippled through the 20 homeowners present. Someone actually whispered, think of the property values. I sat perfectly still, accountant brain already cataloging the absurdity. Victoria leaned forward, concern painted on her face. Harper, we hate to do this, but the bylaws are clear. Another $500 fine and a 30-day warning. Unless perhaps we can handle this privately? After the meeting, come with me to the community storage unit. I'll show you the records myself. Trust me one last time. Trust me one last time. The words landed like a velvet-wrapped grenade. Every instinct screamed no. But 20 pairs of eyes watched, waiting for me to explode so Victoria could label me unstable. I nodded. Fine. Let's clear this up. The meeting ended with polite applause for Victoria's leadership. She beckoned me to her golf cart like we were going for ice cream. We drove in silence past the identical mailboxes and perfectly edged lawns until we reached the back of the neighborhood, a nondescript beige shed marked HOA Records, Authorized personnel only. Victoria punched in a code with manicured nails. The door rattled up with a metallic groan. Fluorescent lights flickered on, revealing a space twice the size of my garage. Not records. Not bylaws. A shrine to a life Victoria Kane had buried deeper than any regulation. Cardboard boxes lined the walls, each labeled in her precise handwriting. Kitchen, Phoenix, Melissa's room, medical, confidential. A pink bicycle with streamers leaned against a crib, still wrapped in plastic. A rocking chair. Photo albums. My stomach dropped the way it does when the numbers in an audit suddenly stop adding up. Victoria stood at the threshold, hands clasped, voice still honey smooth. Before you say anything, Harper, remember I'm only showing you this because I trust you. We're both mothers trying to do what's best. She stepped inside like a tour guide at a museum of her own hypocrisy. I opened the first box with fingers that refused to shake. Photo after photo. Younger Victoria, blonde, smiling, with a man who wasn't her current husband, a little girl on her hip. Hospital wristbands. Birth certificate. Melissa and Kane. Father listed as unknown, but the handwriting on the back matched Victoria's. The dates lined up perfectly with the year she moved to Green Valley and reinvented herself as the childless widow who just wants to protect our community. Melissa is 11 now, Victoria said quietly, as if confessing to a priest. Kidney disease. Mara, my sister, has been raising her alone in Phoenix. I couldn't be there. Not while building this life here. The HOA presidency, it gave me purpose after everything fell apart. Purpose. That's what she called embezzling HOA funds to pay for dialysis and specialist visits. I kept digging. Bank statements under her maiden name. Forged board meeting minutes where she'd signed other residents' names to approve emergency maintenance transfers totaling nearly $200,000. My own name appeared on one loan application. My signature copied with terrifying accuracy from the complaint forms I'd been forced to sign. She'd used my excellent credit to secure personal loans for neighborhood beautification that somehow landed in Arizona accounts. The room spun in slow motion. This woman who'd fined me for mulch color had been draining the association's reserves to fund a secret daughter while preaching fiscal responsibility at every meeting. Dark laughter bubbled up, laughing in pure, incredulous rage. The queen of 2-inch grass had been living a double life bigger than her entire rulebook. Victoria watched me, eyes calculating. You understand why I had to be strict with you, Harper. People were starting to ask questions about the missing funds. I needed a distraction. Someone who wouldn't fight back too loudly. But now you know. We can work together. Help me keep this quiet and I'll drop every fine. Erase the rumors. You'll finally have peace. Peace bought with my silence. The same peace she denied every homeowner she'd bullied. I closed the box slowly, mind already shifting into audit mode. I need to see everything, I said, voice steadier than my pulse. Every document. Every transfer. Every lie you've stuffed into these boxes. She hesitated, then nodded. For the next 2 hours, I photographed, cataloged, cross-referenced like the accountant I was. Victoria sat on an overturned crate, occasionally offering justifications that sounded more ridiculous each time. I was desperate. Melissa might lose her mother. The HOA can afford it. Property values are up. Every excuse dripped with the same syrup she used at board meetings. The irony was so thick, I could have spread it on my regulation height lawn. When I finally stepped back into the sunlight, the neighborhood looked exactly the same. Manicured, smiling, fake. Victoria locked the shed and patted my arm again. Thank you for trusting me, Harper. We women have to stick together, don't we? I smiled the smile of a woman who had just been handed the keys to the kingdom and the rope to hang its queen. Absolutely, Victoria. We absolutely do. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with a fresh spreadsheet, the glow of my laptop the only light. Every transfer, every forged signature, every petty fine she'd levied while siphoning money, it all mapped out like a beautiful, damning ledger. Victoria, Kane wasn't just a Karen. She was a criminal wearing pearls. I could have marched straight to the police. But accountants know timing. One wrong move, and she'd spin the narrative. Poor Harper, obsessed with revenge after all those citations. So I played the long game. Monday, I paid the mulch fine without complaint. Tuesday, I smiled at her in the grocery store while she lectured me on proper recycling bins. Wednesday, I even volunteered to help organize the annual HOA picnic. Anything to stay close, observe, gather more. Meanwhile, the neighborhood simmered. Victoria doubled down, posting new reminders about certain residents who continued to challenge authority. My lawn was measured twice in 1 week. A concerned neighbor reported my kids laughing too loudly after 9 p.m. The Facebook group turned into a digital witch hunt with Victoria as high priestess. Dark humor kept me sane. Every time she cited the bylaws, I pictured her secret storage unit bursting with evidence of the biggest violation of all, her entire existence. By Friday, the board meeting loomed again. Victoria sent me a private text. "Harper dear, let's keep things civil. I'm counting on your discretion." I replied with a single thumbs-up emoji. Let her sweat. That weekend, I drove to Phoenix, told the kids it was a work trip, and met Mara, Victoria's sister. She was thin, exhausted, but her eyes lit up when I showed her the photos I'd taken. She told me she was single, working some high-powered job. Never mentioned a neighborhood or an HOA the money. She said it was from investments. Mara's voice cracked. Melissa thinks her aunt is some kind of hero who sends gifts from far away. I left copies of everything with Mara and her lawyer. Small steps. Patient steps. Back in Green Valley, Victoria's mask started slipping. At the next board meeting, she pushed through an emergency assessment, $2,000 per household, to replenish the beautification fund. Homeowners grumbled, but voted yes because Victoria's smile promised it was temporary. I voted no and watched her eyes narrow across the table. After the meeting, she cornered me in the parking lot, voice still sweet but edges sharp. "Harper, darling, you're making this harder than it needs to be. Remember our little talk in the storage unit? I'd hate for those photos of your messy garage to suddenly appear online. Blackmail. Of course." I tilted my head, the picture of innocence. "Victoria, I thought we were on the same side. Women sticking together, right?" Her smile tightened until it looked painful. "Exactly. So let's keep it that way." I went home and added extortion attempt to my ever-growing file. The satire wrote itself. The woman who fined me for a gnome, now threatening to ruin my life over a storage unit full of her own crimes. I almost laughed out loud. Almost. The escalation kicked into high gear the following week when Melissa's medical bills spiked. Victoria needed more cash, fast. She called an emergency session and proposed selling a small community park to developers. The park where kids actually played. The one rule everyone loved. Homeowners erupted. For the first time, people pushed back. Victoria's face flushed under the fluorescent lights. "This is for the greater good. Think of the property values." I stood up slowly. "Greater good? Like the greater good of your secret daughter in Phoenix." The room went dead silent. Victoria's pearl earrings trembled. I don't know what you're talking about." I didn't drop the bomb yet. I simply smiled and sat back down. "Just something I overheard." "Carry on." That night my phone exploded with neighbor texts. What was that about? Is Victoria hiding something? I answered each one the same way. Ask her about the storage unit behind the maintenance shed. She'll explain. Victoria's empire began to crack. She doubled the fines on my house, now over $3,000 in 1 month. She spread rumors that I was mentally unstable and harassing the board. But the tide was turning. People started noticing her lawn, overgrown by HOA standards. Her own welcome mat had faded. The queen was breaking her own stupid rules while trying to bury me. I waited, watched, documented every desperate text she sent begging me to be reasonable. Each message was another nail. By the end of the month, the HOA Facebook group had split into 2 camps, Team Victoria and Team Sanity. Someone posted side-by-side photos of my violations versus Victoria's own backyard jungle. The comments turned vicious. Hypocrite much? Where's all that money going? Victoria tried to delete posts, but screenshots spread like wildfire. She called me at midnight. Voice no longer honey, but raw panic. Harper, please. Melissa's surgery is next week. I can't lose this position. The insurance, the HOA benefits cover everything. If they vote me out, I'm finished. I let the silence stretch. Then I whispered, you should have thought about that before forging my name on those loans, Victoria. Before turning my kids into neighborhood pariahs. Before making trust me the most expensive phrase in Green Valley. She started sobbing. Real tears, or the best performance of her life. I was desperate. You don't understand. Oh, I understand perfectly, I cut in. You understand power. I understand consequences. I hung up. The next morning, I walked into the emergency board meeting carrying a thick binder and a USB drive. 20 homeowners stared. Victoria sat at the head table, makeup flawless, but eyes red-rimmed. She tried one last time. Harper, darling, perhaps we could discuss this privately again. No, I said, voice carrying across the room. Everything happens in the open now. Like the bylaws say. I plugged in the USB. The projector lit up with the first photo, Melissa's birth certificate. Then the forged signatures. Then the money trail, $200,000 funneled through fake maintenance accounts straight to Phoenix. Gasps turned to angry murmurs. Someone yelled, you used our dues for your secret family? Victoria tried to speak, but the room drowned her out. I kept my tone calm, professional. I trusted you one last time, Victoria. Just like you asked. And you showed me exactly who you are. The board voted unanimously to remove her. Police were called. Federal investigators because interstate wire fraud. As officers led Victoria out in handcuffs, pearls still gleaming, she looked back at me with pure venom. I smiled the smile of a woman who had finally measured the grass to her own standards. The fallout was glorious. Green Valley Estates woke up the next morning to news vans parked on the sacred cul-de-sac. Victoria's mugshot, perfect hair, still somehow flawless, ran on every local channel with the headline, HOA president accused of embezzling $200,000 for secret family. Neighbors who had once shamed me now brought casseroles and apologies. We had no idea, they said. She seemed so proper. Proper. The word tasted like irony, served cold. I sat on my porch watching the chaos. Kids playing freely for the first time in years. No one measuring how loud their laughter was. Emma looked up from her book. Mom, does this mean we can finally put up the Christmas lights in July like normal people? I laughed. Real laughter, not the dark kind I'd been swallowing for months. Sweetheart, we can put up whatever we want. The new board, elected in an emergency vote, scrapped half the ridiculous bylaws in one afternoon. No more 2-inch grass police. No more toy curfews. The storage unit? Sealed by court order, evidence locked away until trial. Victoria's pastel empire crumbled overnight. But the real satisfaction came in waves. First, the bank called. Every fraudulent loan in my name was disputed and wiped. My credit score actually went up from the sheer volume of fraud alerts. Second, Mara texted, surgery scheduled. Melissa's a match. Thank you for everything. I cried in my car for 10 minutes straight. Happy tears mixed with the lingering rage of every fine I'd paid. Victoria's husband, poor man had no clue, filed for divorce the same week. The neighborhood gossip mill, once her weapon, now turned on her with delicious precision. Screenshots of her private texts begging me for mercy circulated faster than her old fines. Someone even started a GoFundMe titled, Help the HOA Karen Pay Back What She Stole. It raised $20,000 in 2 days, earmarked straight to the association's depleted fund. I kept my distance from the circus. My accountant brain was busy. I volunteered to audit the entire HOA books pro bono. Turns out Victoria had been skimming for years, small amounts at first, then bigger once Melissa's illness worsened. The satire practically wrote itself. The woman who screamed about protecting property values had been the single greatest threat to them. One afternoon, a reporter knocked. "Mrs. Ellison, how does it feel to take down the most powerful woman in Green Valley?" I sipped my coffee, consider the question. It feels like finally being able to let my kids ride their bikes after dark without fearing a $500 ticket. The kids adjusted faster than I expected. Lucas proudly told his class, "My mom caught the HOA spy." Emma started a petition to rename the neighborhood Free Valley. I let them. After years of silence, watching my children bloom without fear was the sweetest revenge. Victoria's arraignment was the climax I didn't attend, but the live stream was better than any movie. She appeared via video from county jail, orange jumpsuit replacing her pastel armor. The judge listed charges: wire fraud, forgery, identity theft, embezzlement. Each one landed like a perfectly timed fine. Her lawyer pleaded for mercy, a desperate mother, but the evidence was ironclad. Bail denied. Victoria stared straight into the camera as if she could reach through and strangle me. I waved at my laptop screen and whispered, "Trust me one last time, Victoria." The neighborhood celebrated that night with an unsanctioned block party. Grills out, music loud, kids running wild past midnight. No citations. No glares. Just people who had finally remembered they lived in a community, not a prison. I stood on my driveway watching it all, glass of wine in hand. For the first time in years, the air smelled like freedom instead of freshly cut regulation grass. A neighbor I barely knew raised his beer. To Harper, the woman who measured the real distance between bullshit and justice. Laughter rolled down the street. I raised my glass back, feeling the weight of every petty fine lift like mulch from my shoulders. But the story wasn't over. Federal investigators wanted a full interview. I spent 3 hours in a downtown office laying out every detail, every transfer, every forged signature. They were impressed. "You did the work of 3 forensic accountants," the lead agent said. "We've seen a lot of HOA horror stories, but this one takes the cake." I smiled. I had excellent motivation. That evening, I received the first real apology from the old board members. Handwritten notes slid under my door. "We were blind. Thank you for exposing her." One even included a refund check for every fine they'd ever levied on me, totaling almost $4,000. Blood money turned restitution. I deposited every cent into the kids' college funds. Victoria's trial date was set for October. Mara called the night before the plea hearing. She's offering to testify against some of her old contacts if they reduce her sentence. But Melissa, she finally knows the truth. She wants to meet you someday. Says the woman who stopped her aunt's lies deserves a thank you. I told Mara I'd think about it. Some bridges, even the ones built on betrayal, might be worth crossing later. For now, my focus stayed on the life I was rebuilding right here in Green Valley. The new HOA president, a retired teacher with zero tolerance for nonsense, called me the next week. "Harper, we'd love for you to join the board. Someone with your attention to detail could keep us honest." I laughed until tears came. "Maybe in a year. Right now I'm enjoying not being policed." She understood. Everyone did now. Autumn arrived with pumpkins on every porch, none of them regulation height, and Victoria's plea deal splashed across the news. 3 to 5 years in federal prison plus full restitution. The judge called it a textbook case of abusing power under the guise of community service. Victoria's final statement was short. "I only wanted to protect my daughter." The courtroom erupted in bitter laughter. Protect her daughter by stealing from everyone else's. The irony was chef's kiss. I watched the clip once, then deleted it. Some chapters you close without rereading. The kids and I moved forward with the lightness of people who'd survived the cult. We planted wildflowers in the front yard, technically against the old bylaws, now celebrated. Lucas rode his skateboard until sunset without a single dirty look. Emma started a neighborhood garden club that actually encouraged creativity instead of punishing it. Our home became the unofficial safe house for anyone tired of suburban nonsense. One crisp Saturday, Mara and Melissa flew in for a quiet visit. Melissa was shy at first, 11 years old with Victoria's eyes, but none of her poison. We sat on the porch swing while the kids played. "Your mom stopped my aunt from doing something really bad," she told Emma and Lucas. "That makes her kind of hero." Emma grinned. "She's our hero every day." Mara hugged me before they left. "The money from the settlement will cover everything." Surgery went well. Melissa's going to be okay. And none of it would have happened without you trusting your gut when Victoria asked you to trust her. I told her the truth. I didn't trust her. I trusted the numbers. And the numbers never lie. Back in Green Valley, the neighborhood settled into its new rhythm. Messy, loud, alive. The storage unit was demolished. The land turned into a community playground with zero rules, except don't be a jerk. Every time I walked past the spot, I smiled at the memory of fluorescent lights and spilled secrets. The place where Victoria Kane's empire ended and real community began. Federal agents returned one last time with final paperwork. Every fraudulent account cleared. My name scrubbed from every forged document. They even recovered a portion of the stolen funds, enough to lower everyone's HOA dues for 2 years. Neighbors threw a block party in my honor. Someone made a cake shaped like a storage unit with the words, "Trust me," crossed out in red icing. I cut the first slice while laughing so hard I almost cried. Victoria sent one letter from prison. I almost threw it away, but curiosity won. Inside was a single page in her perfect handwriting. "Harper, I hope you're happy. You destroyed everything I built. But maybe Melissa will have a better life because of it. Tell your children I'm sorry for the fines." I read it twice, then filed it with the rest of the evidence. Some apologies come too late and too small. Life moved on. I got promoted at work. Turns out exposing large-scale fraud looks good on a resume. The kids thrived. Emma made honor roll. Lucas joined the soccer team without fear of curfew citations. And I finally slept through the night without dreaming of pastel cardigans and buzzing fluorescent lights. The last piece fell into place on a sunny spring afternoon exactly 1 year after that fateful storage unit visit. I stood in my yard watching Emma and Lucas chase each other with water guns, grass too long, toys everywhere, laughter loud enough to wake the old bylaws. A new neighbor moved in across the street. She waved, then walked over with a bottle of wine. Her to the woman who took down the HOA Karen. "Any advice for the new girl?" I clinked my glass against hers and smiled. "Just one rule. Never trust anyone who says trust me one last time, especially if they're wearing pearls." She laughed. The sound carried down the street. Free, unregulated, perfect. That evening I sat on the porch with the last of the wine, watching the neighborhood glow under string lights no one had to approve. For the first time since moving here, I felt like I belonged. Not because I followed the rules, but because I'd helped rewrite them. The kids were inside arguing over pizza toppings, normal sibling noise that no longer risked a citation. My phone buzzed with a text from the new board president. "Just wanted to say thanks again. Dues are down 40%. The wildflowers look amazing." I replied with a single emoji, a green check mark. Finally, the only mark that mattered. Looking back, the whole saga felt like a dark comedy written by someone who understood suburban rage. Victoria Kane had arrived in Green Valley as a blank slate, reinvented herself as the perfect enforcer, and built a secret second life funded by everyone else's compliance. She'd weaponized politeness, bylaws, and Facebook groups until the entire neighborhood lived in fear of a woman who couldn't even keep her own lawn to code. The ultimate Karen. Except instead of demanding to speak to the manager, she became the manager and robbed the store blind. And I, the quiet accountant who just wanted her kids to play outside, had become the unlikely hero who opened one storage unit door and watched an empire collapse. The satisfaction wasn't loud or flashy. It was quiet, deep, and permanent, like the moment you realize the grass doesn't have to be 2 inches tall to be beautiful. Emma wandered out and curled up beside me. "Mom, are we staying here forever now?" I kissed the top of her head. Yeah, kiddo. But on our terms. Lucas joined us, skateboard under his arm. Can we get a trampoline? I laughed. We'll put to a vote. Majority rules. No Victoria required. The three of us sat there as the sun set. The neighborhood humming with life that finally sounded like life instead of enforced silence. Somewhere across the country, Victoria sat in a cell learning that power without truth is just expensive makeup. Somewhere in Phoenix, Melissa recovered surrounded by people who loved her without lies. And right here in Green Valley, a mom who once paid fines for breathing had learned the most valuable lesson of all. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop trusting the people who demand it most. I raised my glass to the empty street. Here's to never trusting a Karen again. The breeze carried the sound of kids laughing 2 houses down. No one told them to quiet down. No one measured the decibels. The rules were gone. In their place was something better. Freedom dressed in messy, loud, gloriously unregulated joy. That was the real victory. Not the headlines, not the refunds, not even Victoria's orange jumpsuit. The victory was watching my children grow up in a neighborhood that finally remembered how to be a neighborhood. I finished the wine, stood up, and went inside to make popcorn for movie night. No curfew. No citations. Just a mom, 2 kids, and the sweet, satisfying knowledge that somewhere out there, a former HOA president was learning the hardest rule of all. You can't find your way out of consequences. And if anyone ever asked me again to trust them one last time, I'd smile, nod, and start documenting. Because numbers never lie, and neither do storage units. The end.